We often flatter ourselves thinking that the existential crisis is a modern invention, a byproduct of fluorescent lights and overpriced coffee. How adorably naive. In the 2nd century AD, under the unforgiving sun of North Africa, there lived a man who turned his entire existence into a piece of performance art. His name was Apuleius, a Berber, a Roman, a philosopher, and perhaps the most arrogant genius to ever wear a toga. He was the original Renaissance man, nearly 1,000 years before the Renaissance even thought about starting. Born in Madaros, modern-day Algeria, he didn't just live, he curated a life of such flamboyant intellectualism that people genuinely couldn't decide if he was a holy man or a dangerous sorcerer. And isn't that the ultimate goal? To be so competent that the mediocrity around you can only explain your success through black magic. Apuleius was a traveler, a priest of Isis, a lawyer, and a master of the Latin language who treated words like alchemical ingredients. While statues were being erected in his honor, whispers followed him like a shadow. He walked the razor's edge between being celebrated as a philosopher and being executed as a witch. Welcome to the life of the magician of prose.
To understand Apuleius, one must understand the era, the Antonine Age. The Roman Empire was at its peak, bloated with wealth and bored out of its mind. Into this stagnation, Apuleius injected chaos. He spent his inheritance, a massive fortune, on travel and education. Athens, Rome, Alexandria. He drank from the cup of knowledge until he was drunk on Platonism. But he wasn't your dusty, library-bound scholar. No, he was loud. He was a public speaker who could hold a crowd captive for hours. Imagine a mix between a rock star, a lawyer, and a cult leader. That was Apuleius. But his greatest trick wasn't his oratory, it was his ability to thrive in the absurd. When he eventually settled down, or tried to, he chose the path of maximum resistance. He decided to marry Pudentilla, a wealthy widow much older than him. A classic move for a philosopher in need of funding, one might say cynically. But this marriage would trigger the most famous witch trial of antiquity. Before we get to the courtroom drama, however, we must look at the art that poured out of this chaotic soul. Because Apuleius didn't just live the drama, he wrote it. Let us discuss the Golden Ass, or the Metamorphoses. It is the only Latin novel to survive in its entirety, and it is a masterpiece of irony. The premise is a joke on humanity itself. The protagonist, Lucius, is a man consumed by curiosity, specifically a curiosity for the dark arts. He wants to transform into a bird, to fly closer to the divine. Instead, through a botched spell involving the wrong ointment, he transforms into a donkey, a literal ass. Is there a more perfect metaphor for the human condition? We strive for the sublime, for the angelic, and we end up braying in the mud, enslaved by our own appetites. For the next several books, Lucius the donkey wanders the Roman Empire, passing from owner to owner. He sees the underbelly of society, bandits, corrupt priests, bakers, slaves. Through his animal eyes, we see the beastliness of humans. It is a satire so biting it draws blood. Apuleius tells us, look at you, stripped of your clothes and your pretensions. You are no better than the beasts you whip. Embedded within this tale of stupidity is the story of Cupid and Psyche, a story you know even if you don't know you know it, the original Beauty and the Beast. It is an allegory for the soul, Psyche, falling in love with divine love, Cupid, losing it through mistrust and having to perform impossible tasks to regain it. It is beautiful, haunting, and placed right in the middle of a story about a donkey. This is Apuleius' style, hiding the most profound Platonic truths inside a wrapper of dirty jokes and absurdity. He mocks us while he teaches us. He suggests that the only way to return from being a beast to being a human is through initiation, through the mysteries. Lucius is eventually saved not by his own cleverness, which only made him an ass, but by the grace of the goddess Isis. He eats the roses of the goddess and sheds his furry hide. It's a religious text disguised as a pulp novel, a trickster's Bible. But while Lucius was dealing with magical ointments in fiction, Apuleius was dealing with a very real indictment. The year is roughly 158 AD. The place, Sabratha. The charge, magic. Pudantilla's family was furious that Apuleius had married her and, more importantly, gained control over her dowry. They accused him of using amatory magic, incantations and magical mirrors to seduce her. In Roman law, this was serious. Sorcery could be a capital offense. Imagine this scene: a packed courtroom, a hostile prosecutor, and Apuleius standing there not with fear but with the smirk of a man who knows he is the smartest person in the room. He delivered the Apologia, a defense speech so brilliant it is still studied today. He didn't just deny the charges, he humiliated his accusers. He lectured them on the difference between a magus, a Persian priest, and a sorcerer. He turned the trial into a philosophy seminar. His defense was a masterclass in gaslighting and intellectual superiority. They accused him of owning a mirror. He replied, "Why shouldn't a philosopher look at himself to know himself? Haven't you read Socrates?" They accused him of buying rare fish for spells. He replied, "I'm a scientist. I'm dissecting them for biology." He famously asked, "If I am a magician, why would I need a mirror to cast a spell when my own eloquence is more powerful?" He argued that magic is simply the pursuit of divine knowledge. In his view, a philosopher is a magician, one who communicates with the divine, not to curse his neighbors, but to elevate his soul. He was acquitted, of course. He didn't just win, he immortalized his victory. He published the speech. He made sure that 2,000 years later, we would know exactly how stupid his father-in-law's family was. Beyond the courtroom, Apuleius was a bridge. He stood between the classical world of Greece and the medieval world to come. He was a Middle Platonist. He believed in daemons. Not daemons with pitchforks and red horns, that's a later invention. For Apuleius, daemons were intermediary spirits, the Wi-Fi signals between the gods and humans. Gods are too pure to touch our filthy material world, so they send daemons to manage the logistics. This idea of a hierarchical spiritual world would deeply influence Christianity and later the Renaissance magicians. He wrote On the God of Socrates, explaining the inner voice that guides the wise. He was a man obsessed with the invisible machinery of the universe. He was a high initiate of the cult of Isis, a mystery religion that promised salvation and resurrection, themes that were becoming very popular as the classical pagan world began to fade. His legacy is inescapable. Without Apuleius, the history of the novel would be unrecognizable. The picaresque style, the rogue traveling through a corrupt world, starts here. Don Quixote is a distant cousin of Lucius the Ass. Boccaccio, the author of the Decameron, stole from him liberally. Raphael painted scenes from his stories. But perhaps his most lasting contribution is the archetype he embodied, the magus. The intellectual who knows too much, the man who has read so many books he can arguably speak to spirits. He paved the way for the legend of Faust. He showed us that the line between a genius and a warlock is simply a matter of public opinion. He taught us that language is the ultimate spell. You can kill a man with a sword, but you can destroy his reputation for eternity with a sentence. In the end, Apuleius leaves us with a warning and a promise. The warning: curiosity without discipline makes you a beast. We are all Lucius, distracted by the shiny, forbidden things, braying at the moon, enslaved by our desires. We are all donkeys in suits. But the promise is that transformation is possible through wisdom, through magic, which is just another word for understanding the hidden laws of nature. We can eat the roses and return to ourselves. We can stand up. Apuleius proved that the most powerful magic in the world isn't a potion, a mirror, or a dead fish. It is a well-told story. It is the ability to frame your reality so convincingly that the world has no choice but to nod along. He lived as a magician, he died as a celebrity, and he survives as a legend. Not bad for a lawyer from Algeria.